Greetings from Delhi to all the students, faculty members and all other eminent guests of this great institution. I would have loved to be in Pune to be part of this event, but I could not come. So I will just take the next 3 or 4 minutes to give you my analysis of the Union Budget 2017-18. As a student, when I used to look at the Union Budget, it used to look really big and far out of my reach. And it is only after working for more than 10 years that I figured that the best way to analyze the Union Budget is to relate it to our lives. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. What is the Union Budget? The Government of India has a plan to spend over 21 trillion rupees in this financial year 2017-18. That's the budget of the government. As in a household, we raise incomes, we earn incomes and we spend it. Similarly, the government raises revenue and has a plan of expenditure. What do you call a household which spends more than it earns? You call it irresponsible. Now, we need to look at the government expenditure and revenues in this context. We've all heard of the term fiscal deficit, and the finance minister in this budget has said that we will stay within the FRBM targets very soon. What does this mean? This means that the government will finally come to a fiscal deficit number of 3% when the revenue deficit number is 0. What do these terms mean? A deficit is when the government is spending more than it raises the revenue. But all deficits are not bad. Why is the FRBM target at 3% and not 0? Now look at your own selves. When you use a credit card to buy dinner, you are taking a loan. But when you take a home loan, that's supposed to be a good loan because you're building an asset. When revenue deficit is 0, that means the government is not borrowing to finance its current expenditure. That's a good thing. But when we are not borrowing to finance current expenditure, but you have a fiscal deficit number of 3%, that means this money is going into capital expenditure. It's building the railroads, the roads, the bridges, the metros, the airports. All of that money is going into infrastructure, and that's really a good thing. It is the job of the government to build these infrastructure facilities. I like the budget because the finance minister has stayed with the fiscal responsibility mandate. He could have gone beyond it, but he has not. Let's look at some of the other proposals. What is the main worry of India today? We have a very large parallel black economy. People don't pay their taxes. And it comes back and hurts us. Why does it hurt us? Because the small number of people who are paying the taxes get the burden disproportionately. The budget has said that for the first time, there is a finance minister who has understood that this small group of honest taxpayers need, the burden is disproportionately on them. And he has said that the tax compliance will get stricter, especially after the demonetization exercise. There will be much greater scrutiny to the people who have deposited the money. There is also a proposal to stop cash transaction over rupees 3 lakh, and there is political contributions over 2,000 rupees are not allowed, and he's also talking of electoral bonds which will finance political parties. All of these are going into developing a system where people are encouraged to pay their taxes. Again, I'm going to go back to the first piece that I began with. Why do we want people to pay more taxes? So that the government doesn't have to borrow so much to finance itself. If more people would pay, then the government does not need to borrow. Why should we worry about the government borrowing so much? For several reasons. If the government runs a very large deficit, then we suffer because of very high inflation rates. Price rises fall disproportionately harsher on the poor people and the people who are less well off than the richer people. So a prudent government will keep inflation under check, which means keeping deficit under check, which means increasing tax revenue. What else happens when the government runs a large deficit? It borrows a lot. How does it borrow? It borrows from us, from the households. It borrows because banks, insurance companies and the EPFO are mandated to buy central government securities as part of their rules. This is the classic case of what we call financial repression, where the government will get cheap household savings, crowd out all other forms of corporate bonds, and gives the households very poor return. So finally, through the macro piece, it works itself out, and we finally suffer because of the government running a very large deficit. So you look at the different proposals in the context of the government running a more prudent budget. Look at the other two proposals. He's giving tax breaks to people who are earning in the lowest income threshold, the first slab. He has slashed tax rates there. He's also giving a lower corporate tax rate to people with turnover of 50 crore or less. So he's trying to encourage compliance of a large mass of people who today are not paying taxes, and is trying to get the rich to pay a little more. So overall, we need to look at this budget in terms of the government trying to change some key parameters of the way we have run the country. And I think if the tax compliance rates go up, the tax to GDP ratio goes up because of this, we can go back and say that this was actually a good budget. Thank you.